Today, I want to discuss a little bit about my friend Joe. Many of you may have heard of his recent passing, but on top of being the founder and the namesake and the driving energy of Cheap Joe's Art Stuff for so many years, he was also my friend. For 27 years of my life, I've had an association with Cheap Joe's Art Stuff. But Joe was my friend way back to when I was 12 years old. And I can only kind of really speak to my own personal experience and what I have seen and witnessed myself. But when I moved to Boone, when I was 12, 13 years old, from Central Florida, to say it was an adjustment, it would be a gross understatement. So when you come from Central Florida to the heart of Appalachia, it's a change. But my mom worked downtown at an attorney's office, and everybody at that time who worked downtown near the pharmacy, Boone Drug, where Joe was the pharmacist, would gather in the mornings for coffee and breakfast and talking and telling jokes and hoo-hoos and all that kind of stuff. The first time I met Joe was because of a snow delay, and I went with my mom to work and went to the Boone Drug lunch counter and got to meet all of these people who were involved in the goings-on of town. And Joe was at the center of it, every bit of it. And the day I walked in, it happened to be somebody's birthday. And Joe had on a god-awful wig and an even worse polyester sports jacket, and I think it even had glitter in it. It was terrible. And he had fake teeth and a little like accordion concertina thing that made like strained cat noises. And he sang at the very, very top of his lungs, "Happy Birthday" to one of the patrons in the pharmacy. And I was like, who is this person? I mean, I couldn't believe it. And when my mom told me, oh, that's the head pharmacist, I was like, yeah, okay, and this was way back. This was way back before there was ever a Cheap Joe's. He was animated and crazy and everybody's friend, and just the energy that drove the reason why people wanted to come and start their day 5 days a week there at the lunch counter with everybody. And now granted, years later, a few years later, Joe had been gifted a set of private lessons with an artist and professor here at Appalachian State named Noyes Long. And Noyes was instrumental in reviving Joe's active interest in art again. And, in Boone, at that time, in the 80s, there was nothing. There was no art material. You pretty much had to drive to Raleigh, Durham, to the NC State campus in order to find anything reliably. And if it was the beginning of the semester, you were just plain out of luck, because it had been shopped out already by the students and stuff. But Joe was able to use the retail license at the pharmacy to buy material for him and his fellow students in the class. And as you know, when you go in on a buy with some friends and stuff, somebody's gonna stiff you. You're gonna get stuck with some stuff. And he did. And they would show up on the shelves in the pharmacy, on an end cap here or there. And then he got stuck with a little more stuff, and then he got stuck with a little bit more stuff. And it wasn't until he got stuck with a big old load of paper that he thought, oh, well, what's a way I could, move this easily? And bought the mailing list, a one-time use of the mailing list for the North Carolina Watercolor Society. And that's all it took. And he listed the things that he had there and called it Cheap Joe's Art Stuff, not thinking that it would ever be anything more than the handful of flyers that he ran on the copy machine in the pharmacy. But sometimes the world has bigger plans. And the bigger plan was that Joe's love of art and material would extend way beyond that handful of flyers that went out. And he started filling orders on the lunch counter at night and shipping them out in the morning. And it grew and it grew and it grew from there. But part of the reason that it grew like it did was generosity and care. And I experienced that myself because Cheap Joe's, even when it was just a couple of end caps next to the laxatives, was enough of an importance to Joe that he was sponsoring awards and gift certificates and all kinds of things in local, regional, and state competitions. And when I was in high school, my art instructor forcibly entered me into competitions, something that I had no idea I was in. And I'd win one here or there. And all of a sudden, I would get this handwritten gift certificate from Cheap Joe's Art Stuff. So I'd take it to Joe when I was a freshman, sophomore in high school, working on my art when I could. And he would help me. He would help me use those dollars to the best of my ability because he knew that those were really the only ones I was getting for my art and stuff. And he helped me pick out a smart arrangement of colors for a palette. He helped me, find good brushes that were going to last for me and stuff like that, and drawing material and paper and all those kinds of things. He was there for every last bit of it from the start. But that was Joe. And that love of the process, that want to encourage and be there and facilitate came from years of just being a good guy. And also, he became kind of a Van Gogh scholar. He loved Vincent van Gogh. He loved the story of him. He loved the struggle. He loved the perseverance. And he loved the brotherhood and the friendship between Vincent and his brother Theo. He knew all kinds of interesting facts about Vincent and could rattle them off in just an instant. It was kind of amazing. And so much so that Joe actually penned his own one-man show that he presented hundreds of times to all kinds of people called With a Warm Handshake. And it was a story of Vincent and his brother Theo, and how it was Theo that brought Vincent to the world, because without his influence and without his charity and support and love, it would have never happened, because Theo was the one that provided brushes and canvas and paint and encouragement and care to Vincent when he needed it. And without that, there would be no Vincent. That presentation is available on our YouTube channel. You can just look up With a Warm Handshake and see Joe presenting in only a way he could. I will remember Joe for 8 million reasons, but he was a friend. He was my mentor, and he was my boss. And we butted heads, 27 years with somebody, you're gonna disagree. But some really meaningful parts that I remember distinctly were, when I came to work here, I was deep into a very bad marriage. And he knew it, and he didn't say anything. But one day we were working in the R&D area, and we were painting together, and I just kept sighing. And he asked, specifically what was going on, and I said, I'm just really unhappy. And he was like, life's too short to be that unhappy, and you deserve to be happy. And he was right. But I also shared with him that I was scared, that I didn't know how I was going to make it work on my own, that I didn't know how I could, survive and pay my way and do all those kinds of things that I needed to do. And it was the next pay period, and there it was. He made sure that I was going to be fine. And he also gave me probably the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. We used to have production dinners when we would finish the annual catalog. And the guy who was in charge of the print department at that time was going around giving toasts and stuff. And Joe said, "No, I'm doing Julie's toast. Move on to the others." And I was like, oh, reviewing in my head if I had said something bad, But he stood up and said that the reason he wanted to do mine was that of all the people he'd ever worked with, that he knew that I would always tell him the truth. That whether it was a bad idea or a dumb product or a thing that nobody needed or a silly thing that he wanted to throw in the catalog, and I was like, that might be a little too much, that I would always be honest. And didn't mean that he agreed with me, but he always listened to me. And I remember when he said that, I remember thinking, if that's the thing that differentiates me, then that will be okay. And because he said it, it meant so much more. But his kind of integrity and his need to share and be generous and help, I think was inspired by Teo and Vincent's relationship. And so years ago, when I very first started working here, one of my jobs was the coordination and the functioning of the Brushes for Vincent organization, which Joe started here. Brushes for Vincent is intended to provide art material to organizations, burn units, children's camps, hospitals, and other organizations that may not have a line item budget for art material on their own. And so we would work with suppliers who maybe had excesses or offshoots of things that maybe they'd been working with and it didn't pan out, and they would donate them, and we would find purposeful, intentional places for those to go, where those materials could go, where they would do the most good. I am very, very proud of my time spent in Brushes for Vincent. It will always mean a lot to me. And if you are interested in donating to Brushes for Vincent, there is a link on our website. You can read all about it. And if you've been the beneficiary of a donation from Brushes, we would love to hear from you. If you were one of the lucky ones who were the beneficiary of his kindness and his warmth and his friendship and a hug, if you came here for a workshop or just passing through Boone and got to meet the man, you were lucky. And we know we were. And just know, moving forward, Cheap Joe's will always be patterned after that same generosity and kindness and caring that he opened the doors with. And we thank you for being a part of it, and hope that you'll continue, because it would mean the most to him, and it sure means a lot to us. So thank you.
Thanks so much for being with me. Cheap Joe here.